with whatever we do. No love with whatever we do. Hale demunyu school. Nyepamne ne kudlukula. Nyepangi ragala gena. Nyepamne ne kudlukula. Ibuloke nongoto ni beti sola. Ibuloke dato ni betoto.
Mingi kongo.
Lamin.
Na?
Lamin te jibe norin te nyame lamin.
Kabona wulo kono.
Wulo kono nyinta mo lamin.
Pabilenki.
Muna ngata afamole.
Haina.
Ngata. Ngoto le. Fabrama.
Mingi. Baba nyole.
Ngoto le Fabrama.
Namu jumala kan kuma diten.
Fabrama.
Jumala mu.
Ndele bare muso.
Lunda mana. Jamani mbere.
Alindo ko.
Jamani.
Bari ngoto man kontande.
Bari jamani fana na ramudu man kontan.
Ngoto minaka ngala min de fom filitala. Lamin jibe nori nyaala.
Lamin ida siran sama ne benki. Yala so tol sayndi no ko mo lokko momo.
Ngoto.
Nam.
Itedinte yalo ne lamin hakilo diata bake karamungoto. Anu sainteng ministry ko di ngole si suwo ko amanke ko do holiday la
sibitun
bagona de
ala ni ko kede namo balo
ala ni na ko ina karta bulo be damen ala ni je
ngoto
nam
ngoto mon kontan feren
dama ni mu nekata
ite ka lamin ki wulo ko no nyin tay mon ko do fete malo lamin nyanta sila la be la moy kala karango
dama ni karamol be soron ne ko fasi ka wulo ko nako
karamol man soron ni ko karamol soron da amanke comme holiday lem ngoto dindi ngo nyanta sila la ala karango la moy yamen kamen fue man kontaan anda mande
alla nyin kombo courant adanda la kombo len do la jankara mol le soron do kamen courant ma rado la kombo e ko ndol fana na karamol soron je karamol soron lamin ada lo nyino la amanta ra fena sokon ala mu nekela
lamin ite fo de malon ko le sinol be ke kar radio to
nga fine
e ko yana di mod lamin ya mu na fonye
bir kabin mina kan tambita nteri maning fatu tambite la sukol ala dinngol bebe siri be la moy ka
faru danso am fanan tambira jele ni subala la ngaje dinngol be jet talanta nen kili warol e be seri jelen
sa lamin farante ku kili wo ke no la ba lamin bita ka wulo ko no nyin taymo alami
amandara fenela
ite dine ko ni man si yakari la sino la moy radio to e balon na
mu ne ka ke afonye ba nyara ni alon
telentel jikot
afonye ba mu de be ke
ite balon tel be jikritel ni man karambe ku kele yaje nata karana mbasa malaya e tarije
par ñarande kombo courant ho findira kombo ide nara yede ni sonka bay ko lamin mañata la wulo ko adu karam mo be so da fa ñembe kala
ko to wole nati bawo ngal ni lamin kuntal kombo courant o ka fa me kombo courant asototal wala kinay ko e si suwo kono bari ni ko e si suwo kono be karangol di ke la radio lin telel to hani tele masoto to nyaay man tele soto la bongo bar radio be bulen koto batterie sanga ay si ay alamo
sa do kala nyaadi
ko ta o bulaji
ado kala nyaadi
kamun ke nyaadi
radio abe wala moy la be mona falaje
ibe la karandirol kala jele
ti talle be radio ko men ka karandi
ila subject ro baby jele i baby jele
wala nan ka chocho moy fa dan so wala ngombe da karamo man so la men nyanda kara si so na radio
la silale ayala la sido
dal ko korna ko smolon
kilari
ma be ngila ko momo
ngale limbeta de be nyambo do dilanna
nyara ni ko rim pennat nyara nata
koto bari famo kada
ngata bungono tammi bungono nyara ngando ko fele ko ke baru nganda ni pelo la dija
iyo awa betar la
bungono bismillah bisu diara
ye fongo tanka sina dolu tanka koro Korota, hey, korota.
Good day, wonderful viewers and listeners. Imagery, who is back again to continue with our literature in English lesson. If you can remember, the last class we dealt with poetry, but we were not done with poetry due to time factor. We had to stop, and today I am here to continue from where we stopped. We're going to start with meter, which is one of the elements of poetry. We're still on the elements of poetry. Now, meters are rhyme, rhythm of a poem, The rhythm of a poem is referred to as a meter. Now the adjective is metrical. Foot and meter combine to form 5 metrical feet that is known as a pentameter. Now from that we move to another one that we call a rhythm. There is a difference between rhyme and rhythm. Rhyme is the sound, but rhythm is the beating. So rhythm refers to the flow and the beat of words usually created by regular stress on them. Rhyme and repetition are also used to create rhythm. From rhythm, we move to another element that is called rhyme. Now, rhyme refers to the sameness or correspondence of a similar sound as one as another, usually at the end of the verse. When we talk about rhyme, we are talking about the same end sound. Maybe line 1 will want to rhyme with line B. These are some ways that writers use. Sometimes we see musicians using rhyme, making sure that the end of the first line rhymes with the second one, also rhymes with the third one. Some even go to the extent of making sure that all the words rhyme. From rhyme, we look at another element that is called internal rhyme. Rhyme generally looks at the end sound of a particular line, but internal rhyme is another type that happens within the line itself. Now, this refers to the correspondence in sound with a line. Here is an example. He calculated the bill at my own will. So the bill, which is inside the wordings itself, is corresponding with the end. So bill rhymes with will. So this is what we call an internal rhyme, because it happens within the lines of a particular poem. From that, we move to another type of rhyme that is called the alternate rhyme. Now, the alternate rhyme refers to a poem with some sections corresponding in sound while others do not, as the name implies, alternating. It means line 1 might alternate with line 3, line 2 might alternate with line 4. So that is what we refer to as alternate rhyme. And then mostly the rhyming scheme for that could be A, B, A, B, because they are what? Alternating. From alternate rhyme, we move to another one element that is called a verse. Now, this is a line or a subdivision in a poem. From verse, we move to another element that is called a free verse. Now, a free verse is a poem which has no regular metric pattern. Sometimes, like I told you, it is your choice to determine how your poem is going to be portrayed. So when you decide that your poem is not going to have any rhyme scheme, if you decide that your poem is going to be as the way it is, you will write not considering any rhyme scheme. A poem without a rhyme scheme is referred to as a free verse. From that, we look at blank verse. Sometimes people take them to be the same. This is a poem written in unrhymed lines. That is a poem that does not have a rhyming scheme at all completely. From blank verse, we move to another called a stanza. Remember, we are told that drama is divided into acts and scenes. Poetry is divided into lines and stanzas. So stanza, this is the separation or division in a poetry, simply made to enhance a reader's understanding. Each stanza is compared to a paragraph in a prose. So to tell you, drama is divided into acts and scenes, poetry is divided into lines and stanzas, while prose is divided into chapters and paragraphs. In every part, stanza conveys a meaning or a message. You might divide your poem into several stanzas, but each stanza really conveys a message which is quite different from the others. That is, if you are talking about so many issues, multiple issues in a poem. Yeah. From that, we move to another element that is called caesura. Now, caesura refers to a pause that is a comma, a semicolon, or exclamation mark within a line. All the punctuation marks within a poem is what we refer to as a caesura. Now, it's aimed at making a poem ambiguous or clear. From caesura, we move to another element that is called end stop. Now, end stop, this is a pause. Pause is represented with a comma, sometimes a strong one, that is a semicolon, usually placed at the end of a line or verse. It comes at the end, but the caesura talks about all the punctuations that happen across the poem. But the end stop refers to what comes at the end of each line of a poem. From end stop, we move to another element that is called enjambment. Now, enjambment run on lines, meaning when the ideas start flowing in the first line, remember we told you that poetry use what compressed words. So if you start an idea in the first line, you could not complete the idea there, you move to the next one. If the idea flows from the first line coming down, is what we refer to as enjambment, hence run on lines. It means that the poem has a particular thought begun in one line and extended to the line immediately after. Here is an example. The uprest, it has a comma with a caesura. Now, resilient is not yet done. It has not made a complete thought. So the writer has to move to the next line where he says, have taken up arms, the next line, against the oppressor. So that is the style in which the writer wants to portray his message. So he has used the device enjambment to take the idea flowing from one line to another. From enjambment, we move to another element that is called a syllable. Now, syllable is the number of units of sound a word has. From syllable, we move to another one that is called a monometer. Now, a monometer is a poem of just one line. When you express a message in just one line, it's referred to as a monometer. Now, from monometer, we move to another type of poem that is called a couplet. Now, a couplet, this is a poem of 2 rhyme lines, and it is called a couplet. It's a poem that is made up of 2 lines, but the 2 lines also rhyme. From that, we look at another type of couplet that is called a heroic couplet. Now, this is a poem of 2 rhyme lines using iambic pentameter. From that, we move to another type that is called a triplet. Now, this is a poem of 3 lines. From that, we move to another one that is called a quatrain. Now, a quatrain is a poem of 4 lines. Now, from quatrain, we look at another one that is called a quintet. Now, a quintet is a poem of 5 lines. From that, we look at another one that is called a sestet. Now, a sestet is a poem of 6 lines. From sestet, we look at another type that is called a septet. A septet is a poem of 7 lines. From septet, we move to another one that is called octave. Now, an octave is a poem of 8 lines. From octave, we move to another one that is called a sonnet. Sonnet is a poem of 14 lines. It is usually called a Shakespearean sonnet. Now, from sonnet, we move to iambic pentameter. Now, this is a verse of 10 syllables with unstressed syllable followed by 1 stressed syllable. Here is an example. Our aunt is extremely kind to people. We move to the next one that is called a tacet. Now, a tacet, this is a division or separation of poem containing 3 lines. Tacet, we have triplet for 3 lines. Now it is called, another one is tacet. Now, this is a division or separation of poem containing 3 lines with the first line rhyming with the third line. This means it has a rhyming scheme A, B, A. Triplet is a poem of 3 lines irrespective of the rhyming scheme. But tacet here is a division or separation of a poem containing 3 lines with the first line rhyming with the third one, meaning the first one has the same end sound with the third one and does not have the same end sound with the B one. So that with the line B, that is why we have the rhyming scheme A, B, A. From tacet, we look at another element that is called rhyme. Rhyme is the metrical flow of sound in lines of a poem. From rhyme, we look at rhythm. Now, rhythm is the movement or sound repeated at a regular interval, forming a regular pattern or beat. From that, we move to another one that we call rhyme scheme, those AABB. What they mean? A rhyme scheme is the arrangement in letters of a rhyme words in a poem. The next one is a satirist. Now, a satirist is a person who writes or uses a satire. Remember, we are told a satire is the act of ridiculing the act of a society in an amazing way. So a person who writes a satire or uses satire is called a satirist. The next one is called anthology. Now, anthology is the collection of poems by different writers, poets, published in a single book. When you take all the poems, maybe you have taken about 30 poems, put it in a single book by different writers, published in a single book, is what we refer to as anthology. From anthology, we move to another one that is called sarcastic. Now, sarcastic, remember, sarcasm is a nasty remark that is meant to hurt the feeling of the person. So, a sarcastic is a person who writes or uses a satire. Well, that takes us to the end of poetry. Now, before ending the class, we will look at a classwork together, which will determine whether you've really understood what has been taught. Now, the first one that we have, I'm going to has a ruler setting is called das. The division of poem into separate parts is known as das. In poetry, the self-desired way in which a poet presents his view using length, arrangement, and choice of words is termed das. The use of create invisible objects in the minds of readers is termed das. This is the classwork that we have, and we will answer the questions. We have a classwork that we will want to give you to see whether you've really been following the lesson. Now, a poem which has a ruler setting is called das. A poem of 4 lines is called das. A pause within the lines of a poem is called das. The division of poems into separate parts is known as das. In poetry, the self-desired way in which a poet presents his view using length, arrangement, and choice of words is termed das. The use of words to create invisible objects in the minds of readers is termed das. We will look at the answers together, hence it is a classwork. Now, a poem which has a ruler setting is called a pastoral poem. Number 2, a poem of 4 lines is called a quatrain. Remember, we said a poem of 1 line is called a monometer. A poem of 2 lines is called a couplet. A poem of 3 lines is called a triplet. A poem of 4 lines is called a quatrain. Now, number 4 says the division of poems into separate parts is known as stanza. Stanza is what we use to divide a poem with. Remember, I told you that drama is divided into act and scenes, poetry is divided into lines and stanzas, while prose is divided into chapters and paragraphs. The next one we have is, in poetry, the self-desired way in which a poet presents his view using length, arrangement, and choice of words is termed in poetry, the self-desired way in which a poet presents his view using length, arrangement, and choice of words is termed as structure. Structure is the poet's choice as to the kind of length he wants to use, as to the arrangement of how his poem is going to be, and as to the choice of words, which refer to as the diction. That is what we call a structure. I have skipped number 3, and number 3, which states that a pause within the lines of a poem. Remember, I told you, pause within the lines of a poem is what we call as a caesura. Caesura refers to the punctuation, the exclamation, the semicolon, or whatever used in a poem is called a caesura. Now I will come back to the last one, which says the use of words to create invisible objects in the minds of readers is termed as imagery. Imagery are used to create what? Mental pictures in the minds of readers. Remember, we have different types of images. So that takes us to the end of the lesson today, and I hope you have enjoyed it. See you next time.